In progress.
Hey everyone, I'm here with Simeon Dixon. Say hello, Mr. Dixon.
Hello there. What's
And
up?
yes, and well, what happened? I just happened to come across his channel, and he got into the Pro Male Collective, and I just want to introduce you guys to him. And Simeon, you started off as a Blackpill Doomer, is that it?
Yeah, I started off like making black pill content in late 2020. Honestly, after a really bad depressive period in my life where honestly I've just been going through a lot of personal stuff relating to like relationships and dating. And I was just looking for any explanation and I just stumbled across a black pill. And that's just history. I got so wrapped up into it that I started making content about it. And over the past few years, and as of recently, even though I've always been like men's rights, like I've always had an interest in men's rights, I haven't started seriously getting into it.
Yeah, that's good. It
Sorry
actually
about
makes a
that
lot of
sneeze.
it makes a lot of sense that young guys would get into black pill because I think that's the almost the first step. You almost have to to hit rock bottom before you even consider these other topics, you know. So, but I also I think it's a case where since we don't have a proper MRM and never did, there's really nowhere to reach to. There's no one really talking about these issues in a positive light.
That's what I was saying because a lot of these MRA, a lot of these, I know this is a feminist term, but it's convenient. A lot of these quote unquote manosphere people, especially those who subscribe to the whole red pill pickup ideology, the Andrew Tates, the Sneakos, even people like Jordan Peterson, these people are like trad cons in a sense. They're pushing their own ideology.
Yeah.
Forgive me if I misspeak, by the way. And it's telling that a lot of these people are basically preaching to men to become subservient to women in a way where they change their whole lives just so women can like them. Like they'll push like, hey, go to the gym, become a bodybuilder. You need to like get rich and stuff.
Yeah,
Like yada yada to
exactly.
like have women be attracted to you. Oh, sorry if I'm cutting you off, by
No,
the
no,
way.
you're not. You're going good. Keep going.
And yeah, and something I've recently come to realize, and it's part of it's something I've always believed in that, I shouldn't have to change just for approval of others, but specifically, like, I'm done putting women on this pedestal and, like, being told that I had to change for essentially people have always, like, had a low opinion of not only me, but so many other men and just men in general for their approval. And I'm tired of, like, chasing their approval
Oh yeah.
for a bunch for other people who hate us, who seemingly hate us anyway.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't say seem. I think it's accurate that they just do. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and so, but when you noticed our channel started picking up on them, it just goes to show you that most guys are looking for something positive in their life, and also permission, like permission to say, look, a lot of what's going on is the stuff that you love is going to always turn around. People are going to say it's immature or so if it doesn't get you the girl or pleasing to the girl, it's no good. That's the biggest problem. Is like and men are just this like period. Like you mentioned it yourself that male sexuality is seen as bad, right? And it's only just because it's
Exactly.
exactly.
Like me and Mr. City Crusher here had a long conversation about this before our interview, and something I brought up, and this is personal, but I've grown up in my life pretty much ashamed of my own sexuality because It's this whole idea in media trope, the whole like, oh, boys only want one thing. Like this idea that men wanting sex is like an evil or a negative thing, when it's like completely natural. Like every like 99% of people in general, men or women, will sexually desire others.
Yes,
So why are
exactly.
we painting male sexuality in this negative light when it's completely natural?
Yes. A matter of fact, I find if movies want to portray, if you want to go to a movie usually that portrays weird sexual appetites, they'll usually put the woman, they'll put a woman into the role, and that's what makes it palatable because bizarre female turn-ons for women will be seen in a positive light, or at least not in a terrible light. Well, yourself, even before that, we don't have to go that far. Consider that yourself, you've mentioned it, how an adult woman will have sexual encounters with boys in their early teens, early mid-teens, and people will see that on a positive light. Guys will say, "Oh, I wish I was that young boy." You know yourself. That's
Yeah, like there's so many of these cases where women, like I won't pull punches here, will just flat out rape like teen boys,
yeah, yeah,
and like a lot of these women are in positions of power over them as well. They're their teachers, their caretakers,
yes,
and
yeah,
they will rape their basically their charges, their dependents, and it's pretty much brushed off. While men, like for example, there's this like internet personality by the name of Daniel Keem or Keemstar.
yeah.
A lot of people have gotten mad at him because he's like think he just turned 40. He's like late 30s, early 40s, and he was dating like a 20-year-old woman.
Yes, I remember that one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And yeah, and I know like bringing up a lot of like internet stuff that might be pointless to like especially a lot of older people, but this is still relevant because there's a great conversation about this. There's this other media personality by the name of Carson. He went by Carmi Carlson. Call me Carson.
Right, right.
And he was basically quote unquote canceled for dating a 17-year-old who was about to turn 18, as get this, he was 19 when he
Oh,
had this relationship.
no way. He was only 2 years older. Yeah, okay.
Not even two, I think.
Yeah, so this is what ticks me off. Like even in my country, there legally there's a sliding scale. So if you're only a few years apart, they won't charge a guy who's older. They use some common sense up here. Some, not a lot, but some. But that was the whole point because, like you say, it's like you pointed out the women raping the teenage boys. People try to say that it's about protecting children, but it's not. It's just hating on male sexuality. Period. You know. So just like we said, homophobia is basically male hostile because it's centered on gay men, not lesbians, right?
Yeah, a lot like you'll see even with people who claim to be pro like LGBT, and especially like a lot of women, like a lot of especially women who like claim to be a part of the LGBT community themselves will make these quote jokes that are like anti-gay male,
Yeah,
and like basically gay men's sexuality, if not faced with explicit hostility, is seen as sort of a joke, while like women's sexuality, like women being sexual with other women, has pretty much become normalized to a point where, like, even women who consider themselves 100% straight will talk about how they've like done stuff with other women in the past, where men, if they even call another man attractive, will be looked at as if they said something completely like evil
yes,
in a sense.
exactly, exactly. It's just like we've had this tight little box. that we're supposed to engage in, and that's it. And it goes beyond sexuality. Like if you're just friendly to a child, like say, "Hey kid, what's going on?" Blah 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 blah. They'll call that pedophilia for a guy simply because it goes beyond sex. They don't want you to engage with anyone. You're just supposed to be a man who's stuck with other men and maybe the odd woman who deigns to speak with you and deal with you. Otherwise, you're supposed to be out of sight and out of mind. It's a lot worse than I ever knew when I was younger.
Exactly. And going into like more personal anecdotes. So I work in retail, especially I work in clothing retail. I'm not going to name my specific
Of
workplace
course, of course.
out of like personal security.
Yeah,
A lot of people come in are like women and like young families and stuff. Never like I personally don't care anymore, but I'll just like say hello to like young children and pets and all that because I genuinely enjoy being around like children and pets because I'm just a nurturing person,
yeah,
and
exactly, exactly.
I've I've had people like sort of look at me weird for that, and I'm at this point where if you assume that I have bad intentions because I'm a male, that's completely on you.
Yeah.
Like I'm not concerned about that
Oh,
anymore.
by the way, can I also say they're not? They might in their if you ask them, they might say what you said that they think you have bad intentions, but really they don't think you have bad intentions. They just don't like you, and they don't want you near their children or their pets. That's what it really is. They have to make up a reason why they have this disgust over you. The reason is that people just don't like men. Men don't like men, and women don't like men. It's that simple, you know. So
And it's so saddening to see like so many men who claim to be like pro male like make these like anti male comments online or like try to grift other men, especially people such as like the pickup artist Andrew Tate's
yeah,
of the world.
yeah,
And I've mentioned this in our conversation. I have more respect for the radfems who explicitly preach for genocide of men because, as evil as they are honest and upfront about it.
yes,
And all these
exactly.
like scum fucks will hide behind being pro male and either scam men or will attack men who do not fit their little box, which is why I sort of come to like hate tradcons,
Yeah,
especially tradcons who claim to be like for men's rights because it's not true. You guys still like shame trans people. You guys still shame gay men. Like a lot of your ideology, this tradcon ideology, is based upon hatred of other men.
oh yeah.
Like if you're anti-trans, you hate men because most of the anti-trans rhetoric. And sorry for if I'm like derailing the conversation here.
No, no, you're doing good. Go
I'm
ahead.
just naming examples. But like I'll name this recent example. You know the recent Nashville shooter involving a biological female who identifies as a male, as a man, the trans man.
Yeah, yeah.
We've both have seen how different the rhetoric for that shooter was. That Audrey person
Oh
was than
yes, yes, exactly. The Audrey person. Yeah, yeah. She was.
I don't.
She wasn't really. I can't remember if she was trans. She was born a woman, and they tried to originally say that she was a trans woman to say that she's actually was born a man, and that was a bold faced lie. And so then they switched up and said, "Oh, well, she was a born woman, but she was on testosterone. And that's what made her crazy, right?"
Yeah, like they like tried like this August reporting by saying, "Oh, this trans woman," again implying that she was like assigned male at birth, did this when she was. I'm. I'm like. I'm catching myself here because I don't know whether I should like respect this person's pronouns.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, this is my channel. We'll worry
Yeah.
about that some other time. But the what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that do you know what she did identify? She was a woman, but she identified as a guy. Is I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah.
Right.
This
Was she
Audrey
actually
person.
was she actually on testosterone though, Simeon? Do you know?
I do not know. Like they refuse to even release the like manifesto she
Aha!
wrote.
Of course. And this is a really big insult to everyone. Well, to men. I'll say specifically to men because when they released, like, what was this? What's the young school shooter there? Not school shooter. Elliot Roger. When
Yes, Elliot Roger.
Yeah, they trumpeted his manifesto everywhere because it gave up their narrative. It showed what they wanted to see. So this woman's manifesto is probably showing women in a bad light, is what I'm guessing. And so they're not going to do that.
And yes, and like even the online like conversation has been so different. Like you'll see like of course you have these conservative types who just dislike trans people in general. But
Yeah.
a lot like you'll see a lot of these so called TERFs who supposedly hate trans people, but they only go after those assigned male at birth who identify as like women or any different identities. Like
Yeah.
TERFs have been completely silent on this Audrey. I don't remember her last name.
Yeah, I know what you're
I
talking
don't even care. This Audrey shooter. Like they have been completely silent on her because she was born a woman.
about.
So
Yes,
of course
exactly.
it makes them look bad.
Of course. Here's another thing too. There was a manifesto. This was years ago up here in Canada. There was a man who purposely at university shot up feminist women. He even said so. He said, "All you guys can leave, and I'm going to shoot these feminists." And he did. He left a manifesto, and the police kept it under wraps. No one's ever seen it after 20 years. And so, if what it is, again, I suspect that what's been going on in universities where they've been throwing young men out of universities at a woman's word probably happened then, and he probably wrote why he did it, and it was probably understandable in a way of saying, hey, I was minding my own business, and they kicked me out of university on something trumped up charge. Well, society doesn't want for that to get out, even though he's still a murderer and he still belonged behind jail for that. That they don't even want to give his side to it, or what his motivations, because if it shows that men are being wronged, they don't want us to trumpet that. Like I say, it's only Elliot Rogers that they say, yeah, any man who shoots a woman ever or does damage to a woman or even yells at her face, he does it because he just can't get laid, And like you say, the guys only want one thing, and that's what they want to show it. Like a man who respects women, it doesn't matter how much abuse he gets. It doesn't matter if his rights are stripped from him. He'd love that, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned this shooting that happened. I'm guessing it was probably in Canada, right? In a
Yeah,
Canadian university.
it was. Yeah, it was up in
Like,
my country. Yeah.
you know, you know, like you probably know this. A lot of people probably know this, but do you know like the Andy Warhol shooter?
Yes,
That Val, that
Valerie
Valerie girl, I think.
Solanas. Yeah, Valerie Solanas.
The fact that she has become sort of a pop culture icon
Yeah,
in a sense after basically she was this woman who I think her background was that she was working in the industry as well, and that she was offended by Andy Warhol's like. I think he flaked on her. I don't remember what it was, but it had something to do with like their professional work that
Oh, I
happened.
know what it
That
is. I know it is what it was. She was hoping to become famous on his coattails, and he didn't reciprocate. Or I should say reciprocate. That would sound like she did something for him. He didn't let her. He didn't bother rolling out the red carpet. He had nothing against her, but he was going to back her because she had no talent for anything. And she felt that he owed her. That's what it was. So this lesbian, which is what she was, and he was, I believe, Warhol was gay. It didn't matter that they're homosexuals. It doesn't matter about their orientation. She was a woman. She expected a man to give her a free ride, and he didn't. And that was why she shot him.
exactly, and it's so twisted how she became this like icon in pop culture in feminist spaces, and that her book, I think it's called The Scum Manifesto,
Yeah.
or her book is like legit lauded, like like is either defended as satire or feminists will unironically agree with it.
Of course, it's just a
Like
joke, brah. That's what they say to try and hide it. When people point out that, hey, this is just a hate monger. And but I get angrier at society that just turns a blind eye. They just say they know that feminism is a hate movement. They know it, and yet they just don't want to hear it. And all their hate speech is bullshit because they allow hate speech as long as it's directed towards men anytime. So you take yourself, you could say, "Oh, I'm a minority man." Minority man doesn't mean anything once you're a man. So any woman of any
exactly. And
a white woman could come up to you and threaten you and do all kinds of shit, and society's all right with it because they don't care about your race. It's only your gender identity that matters.
and speaking of that, as like someone who like I'm a black man, for example, anyone who's familiar with my channel knows this. Or anyone who's not familiar with me, I'm a black man, so I have sort of this weird perspective. I like there's this weird discourse in black culture, in online black culture, where like a lot of black women will talk down on black men, will say all this like degrading shit about black men. But when black men date outside of their race, a lot of these women in the black community will get extremely angry.
Yeah,
Like not even just women, like so many people in the black community will get extremely angry when men date outside
yeah,
their race
yeah.
because it, I think it's somewhat mate guarding in a sense, like some weird sort of mate guarding.
Well,
I think it's more like
I think with women it's less mate guarding and more uh I'm not interested in you, but no one else gets to touch you either. I don't want you to have any joy because if they see a black man with a white woman, even though he's really not in any better situation than if he was with a black woman,
yeah.
but still they see him happy, and that's what they're against. They're saying, when I reject you, you're just supposed to be constantly pining for me. That's what it is. You know, and people say, oh, black women are the most vicious or hardish, but it's simply, I think it's a case about status or lack of status. Yeah, if black men, as far as I know, have are on the lotus on the totem pole, so that's what their disgust is about. It's like, you're supposed to be my servant, but you're a sucky servant. You don't know to gain status, so I have contempt. They never had any view of you as a human being. It was always like,
You're exactly right.
yeah,
Sorry for cutting you off
no,
there,
go
but
ahead.
you are exactly correct. Because in the black community, there's so much like emphasis put on status.
Yes,
Like so many women in this community will straight up tell you that if you aren't like rich or something, that you're pretty much worthless as a human being, and that your whole existence must be, oh, you gotta chase that money so women will want you. Like, not even like make your own quality of life better. Like, these people want, like, men in the black community are like pressured to chase money just so women they will like be valuable in a sense to women. And growing up, I've always had like people and like adults in my life tell me that it doesn't matter if I'm not popular with girls and shit because someday I'll be rich and they all will want me. Basically instilling this idea that I have to be high status
Yeah.
for to be like worth anything.
And well, it's not just instilling it, they actually believe it. Because when you think about it, men aren't valued other than when we gain status. They're actually working on a truth. Society does not like men, and it only deals with us if we gain status. That is actually true. And then, but what you really should be angry with isn't that they told you this truth. It's when they backpedal when you point it back and they say, no, 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 but she's with you because she loves you for you. That's the insult. That's what men shouldn't tolerate from society, in my view.
Yeah, there's so much of this gaslighting, this feminist gaslighting. And I apologize for any audio issues. I am outside recording this.
Right. No, you're sounding
So,
pretty good. Trust me.
and there's so much of this gaslighting. And even when I was like a full on black pillar, there's so much of this gaslighting. So people will just bury their heads in the sand and choose to believe these lies because the truth that men are just not valued in society is too inconvenient.
Yeah.
Like they want to live in this lie that women are the ultimate oppressors, even though like going back to like issues dealing with the black community and what you said about like black men being white women, like like 70 or so years ago, like you've heard the case of Emmett Till, right?
I've
Or
heard the
George
name, but I
Sting.
forget. So go ahead, fill us in.
Yeah. So I'll Emmett Till's more famous one, so I'll save that for later. But do you know how old the youngest man who was ever executed in America was?
No, go ahead.
He was he was this 14-year-old boy named George Stingy who was pretty much I think he was put on the electric chair because he was accused of murdering a little girl, a little white girl at the time.
Oh yeah.
And like people will choose to like people talk about the racism of the Jim Crow era, but we'll not talk about the gendered aspect of it. Is that a lot of these people, a lot of these like young black men, these young black teens in this respect, were lynched, were like murdered because of the words of women.
Yeah, exactly.
Like women, like women will be caught cheating with their husband on their husbands back then. Will just say, "Oh, this nigger down the street raped me," and like whole lynch mobs would form and attack these people.
Yeah.
Like Emmett Till was this 14-year-old little boy who was beaten to death because he was simply accused of basically being crude towards a woman, an adult woman. Like an adult woman felt hated this 14-year-old boy so much that she sent basically her husband's and her husband's friends after him and they beat him and like I think they actually drowned him as well. They beat him, then threw him in a river. His body was so mangled that he was unrecognizable. And this happened 1954 and 1955. And while a lot of people talk about this incident, when it comes to like racial politics, they will ignore the gender side.
Yes.
Because this stuff never happens to black women. Like black women back then were never like accused of like rape or harassment and then lynched afterwards. It was mainly men.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's totally men who were like hunted down because like a lot of these social ills, like racism, homophobia, and all that, are all basically towards men. And we talked about this earlier, the Matthew Shepard case, where this young teenage gay guy was murdered back in like 98 or 99, like around the time I was born. And 100%, if Matthew Shepard was like a lesbian or a bi chick, that person would still be alive today, most likely, because like a lot of this shit is just straight anti-male ideology. It has
Well, just
less
to
to do
make
with like race or gender.
no.
As I was saying, like a lot of the social ills are just anti-male ideology. Like it has less to do with like anti-POC, anti-gay
Yeah.
stuff. It just like there are whole laws in other countries that only target gay men.
Yes,
Like you
exactly.
can look this up for yourself. Like there are anti-homosexual laws where they only target men. That homosexual women are just exempt from this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, if a black man gets attacked by a white man, they'll bring up the race issue. But if a white woman stabs a black man and kills him, the race issue never gets brought up. It's like, sorry, it's one of your betters attacked you. And it's what just like, oh, it drives me crazy. Then it just becomes a woman and man. Then the race element is gone. You know?
And yeah, like something that really fucking annoys me is that feminists and society in general will has this gaslight that about like women being victims of like murder and other violent crime and use this to justify like anti-male hostility, when in reality the world is so much more dangerous for men. Like
Oh yeah,
I don't know the statistics surrounding this. I know the UK, strangely enough, that like men are like 80% of violent crime victims. I don't know the exact numbers for here in the US or up in Canada, but imagine it can't be too different.
no,
But men are the majority of violent crime victims. Counting for a prison population, men are the majority of rape victims.
oh
Domestic abuse, like a lot of it is reciprocal. Like both parties are mutually abusing each other. And if it's not
oh,
reciprocal,
just a minute,
like the
Simon.
women
Someone's trying
are
to
the main.
contact. Just a minute, Simon. Sorry. Go
Still
ahead.
be one video.
Go ahead, Simeon.
Okay. As I was saying, like, they got lost my train of thought.
I know.
But a lot of, like, you're fine.
Okay.
I got it now. Like, a lot of these, like, domestic violence cases where it's not reciprocal are women being the aggressors. And so many people are stuck on this idea that men are, like, the primary aggressor. Because even to a point where if a cop is like calls for a domestic violence call, no matter what, the man is always questioned first. The man is always arrested first
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of this lie, the whole gaslight that men are the primary like aggressors in society.
And it's not just
Well,
ignorance either, because the police will do it even when it's obvious. Like when they show up and the man has blood on his face and the woman doesn't, they'll still arrest the man. So they know what's going on. They just don't care. They prefer it this way.
exactly. It's just so sickening, so anger inducing to like constantly hear lies when you know the truth. It's
Oh,
like seeing like the sky is blue and someone desperately trying to convince you that it isn't. When you can see for yourself, it's so transparent. These lies and gaslighting is like anger inducing.
yeah. Well, especially when there's a lot of denial, like denial of reality going on, because that the video you did where you mentioned the brain study or the bias study, I should say, between men and women, like the bias people had against men and for women. The guy said, "Oh, the man who did the study said he was surprised that things turned out the way they did." And I said, "How can you be surprised? How can you be surprised something that you see every day?" So people are really in denial. The average person has to deny gender dynamics and biases constantly in order to do what they do. You know.
And exactly, it's just so like saddening at the same time anger inducing to again people just bury their heads in the sand and choose to believe what they want to believe. I guess to make their own lives more easier on themselves, but at the same time they're just living a lie. Like these people are just living lies and refusing to see the world for how it actually is.
Oh yeah.
Like imagine if just like not even 1%, 0.5% of the male population woke up about this and realized how anti-male society is. A lot more headway would be made.
Oh yeah. Big time.
And
Big time. Well, that's just how bad it is. It's like there's where I work. There's a policy. They'll get together and actually talk about the policy where it said don't talk about anyone's body parts. In other words, uh, don't say, "Oh, that woman, she has such great long legs," or something along that lines, and you can get in trouble. I said, you do realize that that's a one-way street because we all know that if one of the girls says to the guys, "Oh, you have lovely eyes," or whatever, he's not going to go to HR and get her fired. So it's that it's set up. This policy is set up is anti-male, and when I start telling the other guys, bringing it up to the other men that work there, they just go, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Or they quickly try to change the subject because they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to fight it. They don't want to come out and say, "Yeah, I deserve it. I'm a second class citizen and I deserve it." They don't want to say that either. So they can do is try and avoid speaking about it. Right?
right, telling a story.
Sure.
Like so going back to where I work, I legit had this one coworker who was this older woman who enjoyed messing with me a little bit. It wasn't anything malicious, but I remember one time I think she had this like fly swatter thing we were selling. She literally slapped me on the butt with it. And looking back at what you said, if I like, not even that, if I complimented a woman and she took it the wrong way, I would get in like so big trouble because of it. I've actually got in trouble at work because I was accused of like harassing a woman, but it was something weird. Like she basically didn't. It was a weird situation. Pretty much falsely accused of harassment because I don't know. Like one, I would say one of the times she had an issue with me was that I like went to her register and got like some hand sanitizer.
Oh yeah.
Or there's one time where I was just like in the back, like we were closing in the back, and I was just on my phone walking around, and I wasn't paying attention. Apparently, I was like moving way too closer. Basically, just benign stuff. Like her issues with me were all benign stuff. Like I didn't really interact with this person all that much.
Yeah, she just doesn't like you. You know.
Yeah,
And you say it's fine because racism is bad, but gender biased or hatred that's allowed. At least one way. It's allowed one way. You're a low status man. She doesn't like you. You're in her space. She doesn't like you existing. That's all it is, right? So she's willing to be hostile, and she has everyone backing her and supporting her on it. Then society wants to gaslight and say, "Yeah, we're all about equality." Fuck you.
Yeah, and that situation just really pissed me the fuck off because I was like getting in trouble for like legit no reason. Like it wasn't even a sexual harassment thing. She just didn't like that I was apparently getting too close to her and stuff without me knowing, basically. Without like I was just doing my thing as said. Like I went by her to get like a squeeze of hand sanitizer from a register because mine didn't have any, or I was like on my phone walking around and I apparently got too close to her without her realizing. Like, like she just didn't like me for some reason and
Yeah, you're just a
started
guy.
this
She
whole
hates you're a guy. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else
yeah.
to talk, to add to that. It's just people don't want to admit that. They don't want to see it. Men don't like the idea that women don't like us. And they'll fight tooth and nail to avoid that reality of how much they see it. That's why if something in your situation, they'll say, "Oh, there's something wrong with you." There's got to be, because otherwise, it's suggesting something about reality that's just too harsh for them to deal with. That men just aren't liked by women. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and I've had like going to what you said about like people saying there's something wrong with me. That's something I've had like genuine issues with. Because in all the times where I've had like failed attempts at friendships with women or relationships, I always blamed myself. Like I started to spiral into self hatred because I always blamed myself. Because I was always taught, hey, if shit goes wrong with like women and stuff, they continue to go wrong. It's your fault, bro. It's not because women just don't like you or men in general. It's because you suck. And I had this idea that I just suck, and it led to some pretty dark moments personally.
Oh yeah,
And I'm just starting to get out of this mindset, and I hope others can as well. And this is where this whole self improvement cult comes from, that men constantly had to like self improve for women's approval, while women can just exist.
yeah.
Like they don't need to do anything.
And it actually only makes it worse, because if you're not willing to admit that women just don't like men, then all you're doing is putting all this effort to try and get the attention of someone who doesn't like you and is going to reject you anyway. So now you're putting money and effort and and also you know it's mentally draining. It's bad for you. So the more we can get out this our message that, guys, there's nothing wrong with you, that women just don't like you because of the way you were born. I think the better it'll be for men. Like, men can turn around and say, okay, now I'll put my energy into something positive that makes me feel better.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to like get across in my channel nowadays, that hey, like I've even said this before getting deep into pro male stuff. I've ranted about self improvement, even as a black pillar. Like this whole idea that going to the gym, like becoming a bodybuilder and getting hobbies won't get you laid. It won't make women like you. If women don't like you, they just don't like you. There's nothing you can do to change it.
Yeah.
Like stop doing all this shit just so they can like you. Do all this shit because you want it,
Yeah. Well, even the self
not for the approval
improvement
of others.
even the self improvement gets it wrong half the time. Like you say, if they were wise about it, they just say make money. Now, some of them say make money. Those are the good ones. Not that there any of them are good, but those are the ones that are at least pointing you in the right direction. But the ones that say go work out, that's meaningless, because there's all kinds of scrawny, ugly rock stars that got banged all the time, like Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger is an objectively ugly guy. And when he was a scrawny guy always, and he got banged like crazy because he had status. That's what you need to get. But even so, it's like all these guys, all that means is you got the girl's attention, but she still doesn't love you for yourself, you know. And that's something every guy
Yeah,
wants.
and
Okay, go ahead.
something funny is that a lot of women will talk about being in fear for their safety because of men, but there are a lot of women. There's this community that's mainly women who like thirst after these high profile like serial killers, these high profile mass shooters and stuff, mainly because of their status. Like you're seeing yourself people like fucking Charles Manson, Richard Ramirez,
Yep.
all these people, even people like Dylan Roof, like they all get like fan mail in prison.
Oh yeah, women don't
Like
fear men.
just
That's a total lie. Women don't fear men at all. They might feel disgust over us. They find us disgusting, but they don't fear us. They say that because if they were honest and said you disgust me, that would be on them. But when they say they fear you, that means it's on us. That's what they're trying to do, trying to blame us for what their issues are.
like, honestly, I think I've started seeing women just straight out say that, but people just justify it and
Oh,
like make jokes about it. Like, is we've come to this point where even if women like women will flat out start saying, and they've already started saying this to rad femmes, will flat out say that they want all men dead, and it'll just be either ignored or just taken as a joke.
yeah, exactly. Gallows humor, as we call it. We don't allow it in our space, the pro male space. We'll say no gallows humor. We're not here to joke about how we're, you know, niggers in the world. We're here to stop that. We're here to voice against that. And that's what men need to do. Is no, it's not a joke, brah. They're saying it. They mean what they say. And like you say, ignoring it. I don't know what's worse, the jokes or ignoring it. Because if they make jokes, at least they're kind of acknowledging that they heard it. The people ignore it, it's like, you get out of here. Don't talk to me about courage ever again. You know, the average guy is a coward because when this comes up, when there's no status to be gained, all of a sudden the average guy is a coward. What happened to all your courage? That you go on about. Anyway, do you have anything
Like,
else to
you
add,
know what?
Simeon?
Yeah, it's either one of three things. It's either cowardice, just straight up burying their heads in the sand, or like a lot of these people just or just thirst for acceptance.
Yeah,
Like a lot of male feminists out there will just align themselves with like these rat femmes that completely hate men, like because they're hungry for acceptance, not realizing that they are like talking about you guys as well. Like these male feminists out there are like those like lackeys who work for the big supervillain in those movies and TV shows,
yeah,
not realize once the supervillain is done with them, they'll pretty much be disposed of. Like
yeah, exactly.
these male feminists are just all useful idiots to these like rad femmes and all that. And as someone who's spent a lot of my life like craving acceptance, I kind of sympathize, but at the same time, it's like get a fucking grip. These people fucking hate you. Stop aligning yourselves with them.
Yeah, exactly. There's really there's something wrong with the brain of a male feminist. There really is. I don't think there's any rescuing them. They just don't have what it takes. They just lack humanity. It's that simple.
I slightly disagree. I think a lot of them have just been like gaslighted and abused for so long. It's sort of like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. What? Okay, how about someone like Vosh? Just yeah. What do you think of him?
People like him, like people like Vosh and Hassan, if they are genuine, they're just hopeless cases, but others who like simply believe like the anti-male stuff about like women being attacked the most and all that, like men who like try to go out of their ways, like make try to have women like them and be seen as like one of the good guys, those types of male feminists. I kind of sympathize with the people like Vosh, Hassan, Ethan Klein, all those like leftists. Like a lot of these people are leftists as well.
Well, Vosh is a leftist. You could tell he's a chameleon. He's a social chameleon because he's supposedly leftist, but he was against what was it, the gay men on parade. He was bitching in one of his videos about Pride Parade. So he only says he put on this mask that he's like pro LGBT and all that, but he is actually a tradcon who's disguised himself to make himself famous on YouTube. He's a complete social chameleon. Trust me on that. He's found a
I
niche.
never real. That's an interesting perspective. Thank you for educating me on that.
Oh yeah.
But it's weird because a lot of these leftists, this will adopt like a lot of these male leftists will adopt like feminism, not realizing that again it's a hate movement. Like the whole feminism is a gender KKK thing. Like a lot of people think it's a meme, but it's more accurate than not. Like feminism's pretty much the alt right. Like I said this in a YouTube comment. Now I guess since you want to end the video soon, I'll have my parting words be
Sure.
this: feminism is basically the alt them combining the alt right's perception of black people and Jews into one. This whole perception that black people are just savages and like violent and shit, and this whole idea that Jewish people control everything. Feminism is just those two ideas combined into one and pointed at men. Feminism is basically white nationalism, but for women. I will exit on those words.
Thank you, Mr. Simeon. So I don't think I'll have to do too much taking care of the video. I think it's end up good. I'll listen to it when we're done. Now that we're done, and I'll upload it. Now I'm going to end it here. Goodbye, everyone.